right? In any case, there is no Trump family crest. But there is a crest that was on the wall at Mar-a-Lago when Trump bought Mar-a-Lago, when he bought that house in Florida in the 1980s. And it is somebody else's family crest. It's the family crest of the ex-husband of the lady who built that house. His name was Davies. His family was originally from Wales, and he actually had an official family crest, and that was it. And while he lived at Mar-a-Lago, because he was married to the woman who owned Mar-a-Lago, he put up his family crest on the wall as a decoration. And then, in what was perhaps a critical error, he apparently neglected to take it down when he left, and the family ultimately sold the house. And so when Donald Trump moved in there in the 1980s, the crest was still there, and Donald Trump took it. He took that other guy's family crest and proclaimed it as the Trump family crest. It is not theirs. It has nothing to do with them at all. Now, the Davies family, whose crest it actually was, they were apparently horrified that Trump took it down and started using it as if it was as if it was his own. They were particularly horrified when it turned out that Trump did make one change to the crest. Because in addition to all the decorative and symbolic elements that, dragons and stuff, the crest did have one word on it written across the bottom in that little sort of swoopy scroll. You can see it there on the right. Trump did make a change to that. He erased that word in the little scroll and instead just put the word Trump there. The word he erased was integritas, which is how you say integrity in Latin. So to sum it up, Donald Trump stole somebody else's family crest without permission and then literally removed the integrity and put Trump in instead of integrity, which is an embarrassing thing in terms of family stuff. But you know what's more embarrassing? Since he has started this second term as president of the United States, Donald Trump has reportedly intervened personally. He has found the time to take a personal interest in the creation of a new official White House presidential challenge coin. You know what a challenge coin is? When the military was the only institution that had challenge coins, they were like a pretty sober and important thing. They were a real sign of respect. Real symbolic value, really meant something to be given one of these things. Now all sorts of people and institutions use challenge coins, and so they've become more of an all-purpose tchotchke, like a keepsake. Trump, since he has been president, he has reportedly found the time, in the midst of everything else that needs to be done when you're president, he has found the time to personally choose the design for the official White House challenge coin. And he has apparently insisted that it had to have the Trump family crest embossed on the back of it. So now we, as a country, have an official White House coin that has embossed on it the stolen Joseph Davies family crest, except with the word integrity scratched out and the word Trump there instead. And actually, we just found a picture of it tonight after this intervention by Trump was first reported by the Wall Street Journal. For the White House version of the stolen family crest, they appear to have written in both Donald and Trump and not just Trump. So that means it's getting worse over time. There it is. Donald Trump, the big one at the top there. Yeah, that's not your family crest. We should just note, for future archaeologists who may dig up that particular coin in the ruins of what used to be the American Republic, just going to note for the record here, more than half the country did not sign up for that embarrassment. Also, sorry to the Davies family. Sorry about your crest. A good remember to take all your stuff and change the locks when you move out. You never know who's coming in behind you or what kind of morals they might have. So that's embarrassing. Do you know what the BRICS nations are? The BRICS organization of countries? It's an intergovernmental organization of countries. And there's all different kinds of these intergovernmental organizations. There's like the G7 and the G20, and there's, OPEC and the African Union and the Arab League. There's also another one of these groups, the intergovernmental group, that's called BRICS, and they meet every year. And last week, President Trump was sitting in the Oval Office. He was talking to reporters for some reason about how mad he was at Spain. He was explaining to reporters that he thought Spain was terrible. Spain should be ashamed of itself. Spain is bad. He said to reporters, quote, "They are a BRICS nation, Spain. You know what a BRICS nation is? You'll figure it out. And if the BRICS nations want to do that, that's okay. But we're going to put at least a 100% tariff on the business they do with the United States." He continued, quote, "You know what the BRICS is, right? You guys know. You know what I'm saying, right? You know what I'm saying." Yeah, Spain's really going to get it because Spain is a BRICS nation. You know what I'm saying, right? You know what I'm saying. BRICS is an acronym. It stands for the first letters of the first 5 countries that formed the BRICS organization. BRICS, B-R-I-C-S. Brazil, B for Brazil. R for Russia. I for India. C for China. S. What does the S stand for? Does it stand for Spain? No, it does not. The S in BRICS stands for South Africa, not Spain, because South Africa, not Spain, is the S in BRICS, and Spain is not a BRICS country. And that kind of a mistake is okay if you're a 5th grader and this is the question in which you flunk your geography quiz. But when you are the President of the United States sitting there in the Oval Office and ranting about one of our close allies saying they're really going to get it, they're going to get 100% tariff because they're a BRICS country. Go look it up. You know what I mean. And he is just factually wrong about that. And they are not a BRICS country at all. When you are not a 5th grader and you're the President of the United States and you do something like that, that is a lot of things. It's embarrassing to yourself if you're capable of that. It's also just embarrassing to us as a country that you are the president making mistakes like that. I mean, like us having an official White House challenge coin with his fake stolen family crest on it is embarrassing. Him with the whole BRICS rant about Spain, which is not a BRICS country, that is also embarrassing. Just before he issued blanket pardons to everybody who participated in the attack on the U.S. Congress and assaults on police officers on January 6th, Donald Trump, you might remember, said at a press conference that he thought Hezbollah might have been behind the attack on the Capitol. Which is what? He said out loud, Hezbollah did January 6th, and we really need to look into it. Okay. Now, today, he says that the way Hamas has been able to make bombs in Gaza is that they made their bombs from condoms they obtained from the U.S. government. They've used them as a method of making bombs. There is no factual basis for the claim that the U.S. government sent condoms to Hamas in Gaza. But even aside from that, how do you think he thinks you make a bomb? And what part of the bomb includes condom? How do you think he thinks you turn a condom into a bomb? He is the President of the United States. Imagine how the rest of the world is laughing at us about him, about this stuff he says. He said in a late-night online post a couple of nights ago that the U.S. military had, quote, entered California and turned on the water. Enjoy the water, California. And while California officials, laughed out loud and tried to keep a straight face while they solemnly announced to the public that no one had turned on the water because the water wasn't turned off. Actually, it fell to the poor folks at the Fox News Channel who had to break the news from sources in Donald Trump's own Defense Department that he doesn't know what he's talking about here. He is making this up. The Fox News Pentagon correspondent reporting, quote, U.S. defense officials tell me they did not send troops to, quote, turn on the water in California, despite President Trump's claims. Oh, God, it's so embarrassing. It's embarrassing every day. Every day, new, embarrassing, just humiliating, own goal, stupid stuff. I mean, and it's not just stuff that he's saying or typing out on his, device, whatever he's using to post stuff on social media. It's also the stuff that his government is doing as its highest priority, right? They're insisting they're only rounding up violent criminals for deportation. Their violent criminal arrests and roundups have been so well planned that the very first one they did not only didn't target a criminal, it targeted a U.S. military veteran who they arrested without a warrant. Trump is plowing ahead with his effort to start a new war, maybe, or at least start an international crisis by insisting that he is going to seize Greenland to become part of the United States. And he keeps saying he's going to do that, but don't worry, they want it. Quote, the people of Greenland would love to become a state of the United States of America, he says. Quote, the people of Greenland would like to be a part of the United States. He even trotted out his family to make this case as well, as if it was true.
Did the people there that you spoke with and interacted with, did they seem interested in the idea of getting closer to the United States and maybe being liberated from Denmark, who's had control of Greenland for the last 200 years?
100%. I mean, honestly, I didn't see a single negative.
100%. 100. They want to join the United States. Oh, yeah. They want to be liberated. They want to join the United 100%. New polling in Greenland by a local polling firm today finds that, shockingly, it's actually not 100%. It's 6%.
Look, no one should be fooled here. As Secretary of HHS, Robert Kennedy will have the power to undercut vaccines and vaccine manufacturing across our country. And for all of his talk about follow the science and his promise that he won't interfere with those of us who want to vaccinate his kids, the bottom line is the same. Kennedy can kill off access to vaccines and make millions of dollars while he does it. Kids might die, but Robert Kennedy can keep cashing in.
Today, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. had his first confirmation hearing. Tomorrow, he's got another one, but he's not alone. This is gearing up to be a very big week for determining whether or not Donald Trump's cabinet gets confirmed. Tomorrow, we're looking at two other hearings that are likely to be contentious. Tulsi Gabbard for Director of National Intelligence and Kash Patel for Director of the FBI. Senator Elizabeth Warren, Democrat of Massachusetts, is on the Finance Committee that held today's hearing. She joins me now. Senator, it's great to see you again. Thank you for being with us this evening.
Thank you.
A bit like asking about which one is your favorite child. What worries you most about Robert F. Kennedy, the views he has, should he become the Health and Human Services Secretary?
You know, it's right where the little clip was that you did. To understand this, if he's put in charge of Health and Human Services, he has a whole toolbox of ways that he very quietly can undermine vaccines and vaccine manufacturers, and he can get rich doing it. If he does that, he can stand there, smile at you, and say, no, he's fine. Anybody can vaccinate their kids that they want to. But he literally could bankrupt the vaccine manufacturers with the power he will have. And since he's got a financial incentive to do that, we cannot trust him in that job.
And we talked about this a little bit in my last segment about what happened in American Samoa. The idea that that he sort of cashed in and kids did die. You don't have to be a scientist to understand the relationship between these things. This is a really worrisome issue. This isn't even the same as everybody getting vaccinated for COVID. Not vaccinating kids for provably diseases that you can vaccinate them against getting, even by a couple of percent, changes the entire game.
Yep. Understand this. What Robert Kennedy did when he came into Samoa. There was already a problem. There'd been malpractice, and vaccine had been mixed with another drug, and 2 children had died. And obviously, Robert Kennedy had nothing to do with that.
Correct.
But vaccinations were dropping. Kennedy comes to town and he meets with the Prime Minister. They talk about vaccines. He meets with the anti-vax group. They say it was transformative, and vaccinations keep going down. And then we know exactly what happens. Vaccinations go down, a measles outbreak hits, and then kids start dying. And here's the deal. They start dying. The Prime Minister declares a national emergency, and Robert Kennedy doubles down. He sends a letter after 16 kids have died within 4 days of declaring this national emergency, and says, you know, it probably isn't the vaccine. It maybe isn't the vaccine, the measles outbreak. Maybe the problem here is that vaccine itself is so dangerous. And then he comes back, and the outfit that he has put together keeps spreading that lie, so much so that the World Health Organization gets engaged, looks at all the science, and bats it back. They said there's just no foundation for what he's saying. And yet what it does is it not only more than 70 kids died in Samoa, 70 people died in Samoa, it's also what it does around the world, because it gave fuel to the anti-vax, oh my gosh, all those people died in Samoa, and the problem was not the failure to vaccinate. They're promoting the idea that the problem was the vaccine itself, and that backs people off from vaccinating at all. Then that fits in to he gets paid for these lawsuits against these vaccine manufacturers. And those guys operate on really thin margins. So you keep suing those guys, and he has reason to do that. He's able to rake in money on that. And that means potentially those vaccine manufacturers just say, we're not doing vaccines. And that means then you can't vaccinate your kids. I can't see that my grandkids get vaccinated, and that's a problem for all of us.
So we heard the testimony. We heard all of you senators say, we've got the tape, we've got the transcript, we've got the podcast. We know all of that exists. But he doesn't seem particularly imperiled in terms of having this nomination be approved.
No. And, you know, that's what's happening here over and over with these nominees. We did this with Secretary of Defense. We're now doing this with the Secretary of Health and Human Services, really demonstrating in a very public way not just how unqualified these people are, but how disqualified these people are for these public offices that they've been nominated to. Any other time, the Republicans would have been the first to lead the charge against these folks. But instead, they may squirm, they may look uncomfortable, but so far, their loyalty to Donald Trump is ahead of their loyalty to the American people.
I want to ask you, because it's an area that you're very involved in. Yesterday, in response to the Trump administration very confusing memo freezing federal funds that had already been appropriated by Congress, you posted, "We do not consent to this lawless power grab." Today, as we've reported, the administration rescinded the memo, but the executive orders remain in place that include the freezing of all foreign aid, all funds to federal grantees who receive money for any DEI-related purposes, all money appropriated through the Inflation Reduction Act. What's your take on this?
You know, I just want to remind everyone what this is really about. This is about the preschools that get a little federal funding calling us and saying, can we still open tomorrow, or would that be a violation of this edict from Donald Trump? This is about one of my places out in Western Mass that works with homeless vets. They genuinely want to know, can they feed those vets tonight? And how are they going to pay the rent in 3 days? Another place that we've got that works with severely disabled adults and provides care all day long for them and a place for them to be. Their portal is shut down because they get some federal funding. So we're talking about real effects on people all over this country. If it's not you directly, it's your friends, it's your neighbors, it's little kids, it's seniors in nursing homes, all of whom are told that if you're getting federal funding, we're just going to take it away from you. That is not only lawless, it is cruel. And the amount of pain and dislocation for these people over the last 24 hours has truly been something awful, just even to live through secondhand. So Donald Trump and his team are still out there scrambling because they've discovered the American people really don't like this and are pushing back. And the Democrats in Congress, we're trying to push back right alongside them and say, we're going to hold Donald Trump accountable. He has to follow the law, and he's got to follow through on what we have already passed, laws to make sure that those little kids can still go to their nursery schools and that old people can still stay in their nursing homes and that our homeless vets can still get the help that they need.
Senator.
Tech stocks in the U.S. have proven very volatile, with a big slide this week, then a bit of a bounce back. Some of this relates to fears about Chinese AI competition that might outstrip what American companies have done. And it comes amidst Donald Trump's embrace of tech billionaires. Oracle CEO Larry Ellison, for example, was at a big White House event in week one, but then went on to lose over $20 billion in that stock slide I mentioned, at least on paper. Losing $20 billion in a day is a good sign you have a ton of money. Meanwhile, new reporting on Elon Musk trying to take his Twitter game plan and apply it to the entire federal government. He has stormed into Washington. The New York Times reporting that Musk shows up in person at these agencies and is trying to sort of Twitterfy the federal government, installing some of the very same executives who all ultimately cut not a third or half, but actually 80% of that company's staff. Millions of federal workers received an unusual offer this week that, again, like so much that we're covering, might be part messaging, part bluster, given the rules on federal workforces, but also can matter. They were told in language eerily reminiscent of Twitter layoffs that they'd reached a, quote, fork in the road, and they were being encouraged to resign and get some longer payment through about the fall if they did. Indeed, it was the same, quote, subject line must use, according to the Times, in those Twitter layoffs. Now, researchers reported that cutting that much staff, while it certainly saved money, came with costs. And a tech company is way simpler than the entire federal government. But just to lay this out, according to the Times reporting, hate speech surged. The company lost billions, even amidst saving money on the employees. Musk has told staff, as of now, with all of his changes, quote, we're barely breaking even, and it's a dire situation for revenue. So this management style, the Times reports, is now being tried, at least on parts of the federal government, and that could lead to hardship.
We have to reduce spending to live within our means. Yeah, that necessarily involves some temporary hardship, but it will ensure long-term prosperity.
Now, a lot of business leaders mean it when they say that the government should run more like a business. And in individual examples, sometimes that makes sense. People say that the line at the DMV or the difficulty with government websites makes them think it ought to be more like Amazon or Tesla. But again, if you just think about it, those are consumer-facing products. They don't have a commitment to serve everyone. They certainly don't have a legal view that everyone has equal rights. And when you come to the Pentagon or Social Security, they don't have any commitment to be there for you in 10 years or 50. Meanwhile, a Project 2025 Trump ally is talking about inflicting, quote, trauma on public servants.
We want the bureaucrats to be traumatically affected. We want, when they wake up in the morning, we want them to not want to go to work because they are increasingly viewed as the villains. We want their funding to be shut down so that the EPA can't do all of the rules against our energy industry because they have no bandwidth financially to do so. We want to put them in trauma.
put them in, quote, trauma, make sure they have no financial bandwidth. That sounds like making people broke. And you heard a lot of they, us and them, we and they. But that individual and others are still taking a taxpayer paycheck from you. So they're taking your taxpayer money and then talking about they cut the money for other people, cut the jobs for other people, as long as it's not, you know, the new Trump people. Now, while they're flexing the power over the government, there is also a lot of business conflicts here. Musk's advisory group is named after a type of crypto that he owns. I've told you this before. He keeps trying to trick people into saying the name. I don't need to say it to refer to the group, but a lot of outlets, newspapers are doing so, and every time they do, he's getting free promotion of his dog crypto that he owns. Trump launched his own crypto going into his first day in office, and it could be used to buy other Trump products, merchandise. Trump's media company today expanding more into cryptocurrencies. Trump's family members also launching them. He previously called crypto a scam. And keep in mind, there's still governing to be done. Trump just signed an order about banking services for crypto companies being protected. We have an incoming president here, brand new in his second term, using his power over an industry that he's now profiting from to the tune of billions. And I know everyone is a little skeptical when we hear about things being unprecedented, but this level of grift is unprecedented in scope and scale, partly because the tech tools are so vast, and partly because past presidents did not choose to do this, even if it might have been technically legal. We didn't see the past Democratic president, Joe Biden, try to launch a crypto coin, which, if Trump's is any indication, is a way that presidents can pocket a lot of money. The kinds of grift that have sparked outrage in Trump's first term are now seen as some sort of norm from his allies. House Republicans did the winter retreat directly at a Trump golf course. The Post describes it as a politicized windfall. Speaker Johnson touting it.
I want to welcome you to Doral International, Trump's fantastic property.
We have it all in Doral. And the city of Doral, a lot of people don't realize, one of the most successful cities in the world.
It might sound like an ad. It might be an ad. And this speaks to something that is a big part of what happens if a government, whether you call it a out-of-touch government or a more oligarchic government or a government for the few, whatever you want to call it, if a government becomes disconnected from accountability measures, which protect everyone, you, the taxpayer, and any kind of sort of democracy, whether that's rules, norms, or just a general view of the people at the top that this time serving in public service is not supposed to be for private gain. When those things fall apart, we know what happens. We have many examples. And this is not a red MAGA thing. We've seen this all over the world. There's someone who I've worked with here that you probably know. So she is our colleague, but she's made a lot of evidence-based arguments on this. Rachel Maddow has been covering this, including from an international perspective. And she's written books to track this history. And before the meme coin, and before some of the details I just reported for you, right after Trump's victory, she wrote, this happened to be in the New Yorker magazine, she's talked about it in her coverage on her show as well, quote, "Watch your wallet. If history's a guide, it might be worth remembering America's most ambitious and accomplished demagogues have also been crooks." Does seeing the facts and learning from history help? There's a lot of signs that it actually does at times like this.
If you want to move from advocacy to public responsibility, Americans are going to need to hear a clear and trustworthy recantation of what you have said on vaccinations, including a promise from you never to say vaccines aren't medically safe when they in fact are. Frankly, you frighten people.
Hi again, everybody. It's 5 o'clock in New York. Quite a display on Capitol Hill today as Donald Trump's choice to be the top health official in the United States of America Robert F. Kennedy Jr. appeared in the first of his 2 Senate confirmation hearings to lead the Department of Health and Human Services. Kennedy has stoked dangerous conspiracy theories on a range of health issues over decades, including spreading lies and skepticism about vaccines, especially the COVID vaccine. He has linked school shootings to antidepressants. He wants to take fluoride out of our water supply, and he wants to remove restrictions on raw milk. On the eve of his hearings, his cousin Caroline Kennedy sent a scathing letter to the United States Senate saying her cousin is unqualified to serve as HHS secretary, even calling him a, quote, predator. Today, RFK Jr. backtracked on his controversial past statements, his appearance essentially amounting to trying to pull a fast one on Congress. He started off denying his anti-vax positions, saying he is, quote, pro-safety and for good science. He confused the government health programs, Medicare and Medicaid, and he flip-flopped on his previously stated comments on women's reproductive health, at one point throwing the future of the abortion pill, mifepristone, into question. Watch.
President Trump has made it clear to me that one of the things he is not taking a position yet on mifepristone, a detailed position, but he's made it clear to me that he wants me to look at safety issues, and I'll ask NIH and FDA to do that.
Democratic Senator Maggie Hassan of New Hampshire dug in on some of Kennedy's flip-flops.
Have clearly stated in the past that bodily autonomy is one of your core values. The question is, do you stand for that value or not? When was it that you decided to sell out the values you've had your whole life in order to be given power by President Trump?
Senator, I agree with President Trump that every abortion is a tragedy, that we can't be a moral authority in this country.
Right. So, but that isn't what you said back in New Hampshire in 2023. My question is exactly when did you decide to sell out your life's work and values to get this position?
Senator, I agree with President Trump that every abortion is a tragedy.
So what you're telling us, just to be clear, because my time is limited, is that regardless of what you believe, regardless of what values you have, if President Trump tells you to do something, you're going to do it.
I think the date is sometime around when Kamala Harris didn't take his call. Now, when it comes to the role of our country's HHS secretary, that person oversees 13 different agencies, and they impact every single American. These conspiracies and about faces have real life and death consequences. Here's a remarkable exchange where Senator Michael Bennet had a lightning round of questions for this nominee.
Did you say that COVID-19 was a genetically engineered bioweapon that targets black and white people but spared Ashkenazi Jews and Chinese people?
I didn't say it was deliberately targeted. I just quoted an NIH-funded and NIH published study.
Did you say that it targets black and white people but spared Ashkenazi Jews?
I quoted a study, Your Honor. I quoted an NIH study that showed that
I'll take that as
certain
yes.
races
I have to move on, I have to move on. Did you say that Lyme disease is highly likely a materially engineered bioweapon? I made sure I put in the highly likely. Did you say Lyme disease is a highly likely militarily engineered bioweapon?
I probably did say that.
Did you say that?
And that's what the developer of Lyme
I want all of
disease
our colleagues to hear it, Mr. Kennedy. I want them to hear it. You said yes. Did you say that exposure to pesticides causes children to become transgender?
No, I never said that.
Okay, I have the record that I'll give to the chairman, and he can make his judgment about what you said. Did you write in your book, and it's undeniable, that African AIDS is an entirely different disease from Western AIDS? Yes or no, Mr. Kennedy?
I'm not sure if I made that.
Okay, I'll give it to the chairman, Mr. Kennedy. And my final question, did you say on a podcast, and I quote, "I wouldn't leave abortion to the states. My belief is we should leave it to the woman. We shouldn't have the government involved, even if it's full term." Did you say that, Mr. Kennedy?
Senator, I believe that every abortion is a tragedy.
Did you say it, Mr. Kennedy? This matters. It doesn't matter what you come here and say that isn't true, that's not reflective of what you really believe, that you haven't said over decade after decade after decade, because unlike other jobs we're confirming around this place, this is a job where it is life and death for the kids that I used to work for in the Denver public schools and for families all over this country that are suffering from living in the richest country of the world that can't deliver basic health care and basic mental health care to them. It's too important for the games that you're playing, Mr. Kennedy.
Wow. That's where we start the hour with some of our favorite experts and friends. Former White House COVID-19 response coordinator under President Joe Biden and the dean at Brown University School of Public Health, Dr. Ashish Jha, is back. Plus, president of Reproductive Freedom for All, Mini Timiraju's here. Also joining us, MSNBC political analyst Tim Miller, former RNC spokesman, now host of the Bulwark podcast. And lucky for us, Basil Smikle is still here. There are a lot of things that we just hold up a mirror to and say, ta-da, Trump won, and here's what's happening. But, Tim Miller, I just need you to rewind the tape. How the F did we get here?
Well, if you rewind the tape back too far, then you wouldn't be able to find any senators who would vote to confirm this person. This, to me, just shows what the farce of today is, right? That RFK Jr., and maybe some hold these positions, but are not any Republican senators. Did support abortion up till the moment of birth. Was a trial lawyer that sued companies on behalf of environmentalists. Was a far left kook that pushed vaccine conspiracies. I think most of those vaccine conspiracies that were far left kooks have now joined the far right kooks, and they're kind of aligned in a kook alliance against the rest of us. But this was the type of person that if he'd walked into a Republican conference meeting like 4th of July last year, they would have been like, get out of here. Like, you're not welcome here. You're crazy. So, the Democrats were asking him serious questions that he couldn't answer. And the Republicans can't even really defend him. And so we have now a person that is unqualified. I mean, just you played those clips. I had to suffer through half of it today. During the hearing today, Marsha Blackburn, not exactly the sharpest knife in the Senate, had to correct him because he didn't know what agency Dr. Oz was supposed to lead. That's a real sentence. Dr. Oz is leading a different agency, and RFK couldn't remember which one it was, but that's going to be under him. He guessed that 30 million children were on Medicaid when Senator Lujan asked him how many children are on Medicaid. Like, does he know how many people are in the country? Like 3 million kids are born a year. He said that heroin was easier to get off of than antidepressants. Today, that wasn't like in an old podcast from 2021. Today, he said that during his testimony. Like, we're kind of coming on the downslope of an opioid crisis that all you had to do is watch one documentary about to know the ravages of heroin and how hard it is to get off of heroin. So, and it's a preposterous nomination. His resume is zero. And the only reason that he's here is that he endorsed Donald Trump. Donald Trump gave him the job, and all the Republican senators are scared of Donald Trump. So I guess that's the simple answer to your question.
Yeah, it's just really important context. We're not here covering this story of this person whose own cousin calls him a, quote, predator. Actually, let me just show you what Caroline Kennedy said about his hypocrisy on vaccines. Here's what he did to his own kids.
Bobby preys on the desperation of parents of sick children, vaccinating his own kids while building a following, hypocritically discouraging other parents from vaccinating theirs.
That accusation that a human being, quote, preys on the desperation of parents of sick children, vaccinating his own kids while building a following by hypocritically discouraging other parents from vaccinating theirs, in any normal time for any job, is disqualifying. And I guess maybe it's the RFK hearing that is so farcical that I just wonder if the Republicans really dig down. Do you think any of them are saying, ooh, am I really going to do this one, Tim?
You wonder. And the other just contrast on the kids, to me, the worst of all the RFK stories, is he said himself that when he goes on hikes and he sees mothers with small children, he confronts them and tells them not to vaccinate their children. Like, that is the behavior of a madman, an insane person. Will any Republicans do the right thing? I don't know. Look, there were 3 Republicans voted against Pete Hegseth. You need 4. So let's just say those 3 do again. I don't think it's any guarantee, but let's just say you need 1 more. I'm here in Louisiana. Bill Cassidy is a doctor. He voted to convict Donald Trump in the second impeachment. He was the only Republican on the Senate that asked kind of a modicum of serious questions today, and it wasn't so tough, but he at least asked some serious questions today. And in Louisiana, we have this jungle primary system where all the parties run together. So, ostensibly, who knows? Maybe his political career is not quite as beholden to the far right as somebody in a closed primary state. So I look at him as potentially the 4th, but it's like, I mean, have you seen anything that would make you think that somebody like Bill Cassidy is going to use this moment to show spine? I don't think so. But as somebody that's a doctor that had already voted to convict Trump, that's political career might be over anyway. I mean, he might lose a MAGA challenge anyway because of that conviction. Maybe he'd be the type of person that would do it. But I wouldn't get your hopes up. Nobody's made any money betting on these guys.
I want to bring in Democratic Florida Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz, who is on the House Appropriations Committee, so you understand how money moves through the government. And I just want to remind people who may be joining us of what happened. There was a decision made that more than 1,000 programs were going to be frozen and reviewed. But it was described in a 2-page memo. And so there was confusion yesterday. We saw it at the White House press briefing about what exactly was covered. Then OMB put out a 2-sentence memo today that said that the memorandum was rescinded. Now, the press secretary, Caroline Leavitt, said this is not a rescission of the federal funding freeze, just a rescission of the OMB memo. Do you have any clarity for us on what's happening?
Well, this Republican ripoff, Chris, is about as clear as mud now. But that's the point. I mean, what Donald Trump and his Project 2025 cronies are trying to do here is muddy the waters as much as possible with the OMB memo that froze, across the board, nearly all programs that fund things like housing and healthcare and meals for vulnerable people and transportation projects, and the list goes on. Froze all of that spending that was appropriated by Congress, that is federal law, and that the president does not have the ability to stop from being spent and ensuring that these programs are carried out the way Congress intended. They got caught with their hand in our purse, and now they're trying to backpedal and hide the crime. And it's very clear that they are still going to try to freeze spending. They're still going to try to, quote, align the spending with whatever the president decided his agenda was. And I can tell you just here at home, our regional transportation authority has said that they would have to stop all of their work orders as of 5 o'clock yesterday. We have the United Way that has reached out to us and is very concerned that they won't be able to move forward with their housing for the homeless program. We have Healthy Mothers, Healthy Babies that helps vulnerable pregnant women who are really desperately concerned that they won't have the resources to take care of pregnant mothers. Child care programs, Meals on Wheels. Great. He's not affecting Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid. By the way, only not affecting Medicaid because we caught them because they closed all the Medicaid portals in all 50 states yesterday and then backpedaled on Medicaid yesterday, too. The chaos is the point. The Congress is not going to allow the Republican ripoff to take place. Neither are organizations that are already suing. And the only reason they appear to have repealed this memo...
If I can stop you there for just a second, sure. Congressman, because then a logical question becomes how. You, on this program, and other Democrats said during the campaign, believe Donald Trump when he tells you what he'll do, and don't believe him when he says he doesn't know anything about Project 2025. So, given that, did you expect this? And how are you, as Democrats, and as you say, some organizations impacted by this, prepared to deal with it?
Well, we already had one successful lawsuit, and that put a stop on the implementation of the memo until at least Monday, when the judge can do a more thorough review. There are organizations across the country that are gearing up to file lawsuits if they have not already filed them already. And no, I'm not at all surprised. The guy who is his nominated OMB director was the author of Project 2025. This is Project 2025 coming to fruition. And they've made very clear through his press secretary's statement that they intend to freeze funding on these programs so that they can review them to align with President Trump's agenda and then stop the expenditures of those funds and hurt children and pregnant mothers and homeless people. More people will commit suicide. I mean, these are programs across the board. We'll have vital transportation programs and infrastructure programs come to a screeching halt, as our regional transportation managers told us yesterday here in South Florida. This is Donald Trump engaging in authoritarian, autocratic rule that he does not have the authority to engage in. And so it's going to require the continued all hands on deck to stop the Republican steal.
Congresswoman Debbie Wasserman Schultz, on a busy day on the Hill, thank you. Appreciate you coming in to talk to us.